board meeting of the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors. Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Present.
Mr. McGlade?
Present.
Mr. LaFurla?
Present.
Mr. Arthur?
Present.
Mr. Kazire?
Present. Okay, as you are able, would you please rise with me to observe a moment of silence followed by our pledge? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll just look off your notes here. Before us now, we have the approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I can move approval of the agenda.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, and the motion is carried. Now we have the approval of our previous board minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the minutes from the closed session and workshop regular business meeting of December 11, 2018.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Additions, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving our minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and our motion has carried. Next up, we have the public participation. This is a time for individuals of the public to address the board concerning board items, or by that matter, anything of concern. If you wish to address the board, please make your way to the podium. Seeing no one, move that way. We will move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Kozar. At this time, for our superintendent's report, on the student achievement bullet, we have Dr. Matthews. Dr. Tracy Matthews is going to come and present to the board a report on the 2017-18 preschool data review. We're pretty excited about this data too. So let me just set the stage that Dr. Matthews has done some really great work, and I can't wait for her to share it.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to share our data with you, as well as some updates and different happenings we've had in preschool. I will start just by giving an overview so you know where we are since the last time I spoke with you in October. We have had an increase in our enrollment. We now have 105 3-year-olds enrolled in our preschool programs, and we have 430 4-year-olds enrolled. We have another screening tomorrow, and we will fill some spots. We had a few move out over the winter break, and we will get those filled right away. Those students are spread out in our 32 district preschool classrooms, and you can see the breakdown there. We do have 3 specialized preschool classrooms. We have 4 integrated preschool classrooms with at least up to 50-50 ratio of special education and general education students. And then we have 3 half-day programs that primarily serve 3-year-olds, and then we have some 4-year-olds in there that aren't eligible for the full day, and then 22 full-day programs, as well as our 2 partners at the YMCA and Children's Center. We have done a lot of work this year that I'm very proud of in professional development, and then also in our qualifications for our preschool teacher assistants. In our continuous pursuit of the continuous improvement, we have really been working with the preschool teachers on intentionality. We've studied the book, The Intentional Teacher, and we're really focused on teachers having clear instructional outcomes, even for brief interactions that they have with our 3- and 4-year-olds, and making sure that with those outcomes, they're really strategically planning the resources that they'll have available to help students achieve that outcome, the instructional strategies that they're going to be using, how they're going to assess the child's progress in the moment toward that outcome, and then how they'll give 3 and 4-year-olds feedback to tie into our district focus. I'm really proud of the work that the teachers have done with that. Additionally, we spend time with our teaching teams laying out different strategies that they can use to analyze their data and some of the data that I will be sharing with you so that they can be very strategic when planning some whole group and small group lessons and even some additional one-on-one dosages for students who are not meeting the benchmarks for our widely held expectations. We have also been working on our new, the qualifications for teacher assistants. You'll recall approving the change in the job description for our preschool paras to those preschool teacher assistants because of these increased requirements that we are asking of them. If they do not have a minimum of an associate's degree or currently hold their child development associate certificate, we are working with our early childhood consultant in partnership with the AEA to get them the professional development that they would need so they will receive their CDA, their child development associate, and they get a lot of really great professional development we're seeing the impact pay off in our classrooms. The last initiative we have going on with our professional development is all of the preschool teachers have been part of early implementation of our new professional growth system that we will be rolling out district-wide next year. And this has really provided me a great opportunity to meet one-on-one with all of the preschool teachers, to set individual goals with them, get into their classrooms and observe them, and then engage in some of that reflective feedback conversation and help them grow and meet those goals. So that's been really exciting too. So now we'll get into the different preschool assessment tools we use. We use 3 main tools in preschool, and the first 2 are literacy screeners. So we use the individual growth and development indicators and Get Ready to Read. The third one is our more comprehensive measure, and it is the Teaching Strategies Gold. And that is what we use to measure all areas of development, not just literacy. And that's our ongoing formative assessment tool that's required by the state for us to utilize. So we'll talk a little bit about the data from those and how we use it. So the first screener I will be discussing is the Individual Growth and Development Indicators, or the IGDs. This is a screener that was designed to inform decisions about whether children are demonstrating adequate levels of performance in literacy. We give 4 subtests 3 times a year, and then a 5th one, alliteration, is only given twice a year in the winter and the spring. It's not developmentally appropriate, so they don't even have a screener for alliteration in the fall. But going across the bottom, the 5 different subtests are picture naming, rhyming, alliteration, sound identification, and then which one doesn't belong, where students are asked, given 3 objects, which one doesn't belong in that category. You'll see the gold bar is showing our fall data from 2017-18. The more orangish red is showing our winter data, and then the darker blue is showing our spring data there. We are very happy to see that there is steady growth in most of these areas. We did have a little bit of a decrease in alliteration, and one way that we addressed that was by going back to our curriculum maps, looking at where we might have some gaps, and then we actually added a supplemental resource that spirals alliteration concepts throughout the year. So we were trying to address that area of need. This is showing the same subtests across the bottom and the same testing periods, but rather than showing those students who were, the percent of students who were categorized as making progress, this is showing those that were considered at risk. So we are glad to see in this case that we have those fairly steady decreases in a lot of areas. Again, alliteration, we had just a tiny slight increase there, but that was such a low area, we didn't have very many students at risk. We do continue to see that students are struggling on this particular assessment with sound identification. One of the ways, or the way that they are considered to be not at risk on IGDs for sound identification is they are given a sound by the teacher, and then they have to identify which letter makes that sound. And that is counter to our Iowa Early Learning Standards and our Teaching Strategies Gold, where students are asked to produce the sounds of familiar letters. So they work a little bit opposite of each other. In the area of producing those familiar sounds, the widely held expectations would be 10 to 20 sounds, and we are over 85% proficient in that area on our teaching strategies gold. So while this measure is one measure that shows that might be an area of concern, when called upon to do what is asked of them in the Iowa Early Learning Standards, they're able to produce that sound. So we always look at more than one data source to double check what the area of concern might be. This is just showing our baseline data. So we have given the IGDs one time so far this year at the beginning of the year. And this is the percent of students making progress in the 4 areas that they were assessed in. And we have very similar trends to what we had in 2017. This is where we would expect to be at the beginning of the year. We know that most of the students we serve are at a pretty high level of risk, and that's why they're in our program. So this isn't surprising. We would anticipate similar results to 2017-18 and anticipate that stair step going up each time we assess. Likewise, our trends are very similar from the beginning of the year this year for the percent of students at risk on IGDs when they are initially screened. That brings us to our second literacy screener. This one is called Get Ready to Read, and it is administered 2 times a year. This screening tool is designed to help parents and teachers understand how children are developing the skills needed to become successful readers. There are 20 different items on this screener, and they measure print knowledge, linguistic awareness, and emergent writing. This is given in September, and then again the last week in May and the first week of April is that next testing window. And what is important to note before I go into all of the different data on there is that a score of 16 at the end of the year on this screening tool will indicate with strong confidence that the child has the early literacy skills necessary to become a successful reader. So when you look at this graph, this is our 17-18 pre and post data. The pre-assessment, it's the number of students in each category. The pre-assessment is in gold and the post-assessment is in blue. Top to bottom, we have the number of students who had very weak skills, average skills, strong skills, and very strong skills. So we were very, very pleased to see that our gold bands in all 4 of the lower areas shrunk, and our very strong skills, the number of students in that category drastically increased. We had just over 90% of our students in either strong skills or very strong skills by the end of last year. And again, this is showing the baseline data from the September Get Ready to Read screener. And you will notice there are more students in every band, but the distribution of the students is pretty similar to what we had. You almost see a bell curve there on its side. So again, very much what we would expect at the beginning of the year, and I would anticipate the same or better results at the end of this year. The final assessment I will speak with you about tonight is our most comprehensive assessment, and it is the Teaching Strategies Gold. It is not an acronym for anything, but it is always capitalized. That's just a caveat I'll give you. This is an authentic observation-based assessment system for children from birth through 3rd grade, and it is proven to be valid and reliable by extensive field testing. This is the state-required assessment system for any preschool student in Iowa, or any preschool programs that are generating statewide voluntary preschool funds. So with this formative assessment tool, our teaching teams, including those teacher assistants, are constantly collecting data and analyzing the data. For all of the teachers' lessons, they are determining which gold objectives they are teaching toward, which ones they and their teacher assistants will be collecting data on, and then we are using that data constantly throughout the year to make those instructional decisions. We do checkpoint the data at 3 times in the year. So we checkpoint in November, February, and May. And you will see that in the gold, the fall is November, that orangish red, the winter, is our February data, and then the blue is our spring data from 2017-2018. This covers 6 different developmental areas across the bottom from left to right. You'll see social emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and mathematics. This data represents the percent of students that are either meeting or exceeding widely held expectations for their age as measured by the Teaching Strategies Gold formative assessment. The percent of students meeting or exceeding those widely held expectations consistently increased at each checkpoint period in every area that we assessed. And all of our students were, at least 87% of our students were meeting or exceeding widely held expectations in all 6 of those areas. In case you were curious how we stacked up against the rest of the state using gold, this graph does show that Council Bluffs School District students there in the gold compared to the state in the blue. We had at least the same percentage of students meeting or exceeding the widely held expectations. In fact, more than that percentage in all but one area. And this is just a different view of our baseline data. So we have done one checkpoint in gold this year in November. So after about 12 weeks of instruction, we are starting the year pretty much where we would expect to be. We see very similar trends to last year. After one checkpoint period in November, this graph shows that the percent of students who met or exceeded widely held expectations at this point in the areas of social emotional language and literacy were greater than last year. So the gold is showing the number or the percent of students who were below the widely held expectation. The orange shows the percentage of students who currently meet the widely held expectation. And then there's a tiny sliver of blue. That's the percentage of students exceeding the widely held expectation in November. Again, very similar to where we started last year. And we know that the students will continue to learn and grow throughout the year, and we'll expect to see more similar to the stair-step trend line we saw at the end of 2017-18. Finally, I would just like to thank you all for your support with our Head Start grant application. I wanted to give you a brief update. We were able to submit that grant application on November 21st. We feel very confident and excited about what we submitted. We expect to hear in the spring. I don't know exactly what spring means to the federal government, but our grant writer was hoping March. Might be ambitious. They will begin having pre-funding negotiations at that time, and then a final award should be expected by July 1st. A brief update. What questions do you all have?
Any questions from the board for Dr. Matthews? Kyle?
Okay, so for all of the different tests that you have, is that just, I guess I just want a little bit of clarification
Sure.
on who's the students taking it. Is it both 3 and 4-year-olds, and then full day, half day? Do they all just get the same assessment, or?
Great question. The 2 screeners are for 4-year-olds only. Regardless of what program they're in, all 4-year-olds have those. The gold is for every student, regardless of program, 3s and 4s.
Was the data, for the most part, what you expected it to be?
It was. Our math continues to be a little bit lower than the other areas. So I'm working very closely with our curriculum specialist to develop curriculum maps. We've never had curriculum maps in math for preschool before. And we did the same thing a few years ago for literacy, language, and writing, and provided a lot of professional development on that. So even though 87% is a great number, we're really proud of it. We want to see that growing. We noticed that that was low in the state too, so we're trying to work with the other Potawatomi County preschools that are part of our grants and get ideas on different curriculum implementation. But yeah, for the most part, we're aiming for every category above 90% this year. That's our department goal.
Okay.
Well, I just have to say that this is one success that we should celebrate, that it's important to recognize that the work that you're doing with the preschool teachers is making a successful impact on the students that we serve. And
Teachers are working really hard, so
Right.
kudos to them, and the students are learning a lot. We're very
we celebrate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. It is truly some good work that's taken place, so I appreciate that support for that and recognition. At this time, we're going to do a couple of informational presentations, and so Mrs. Julie Smith is going to come and join us to present on the class of 2018 post-secondary enrollment. And we have some spots that we also can celebrate in this data, knowing that we will continue to work on this area. So Ms. Smith, the floor is yours.
I'm pretty sure the last time Dr. Matthews presented preschool, I followed it with secondary things. So
Yeah.
again, both ends of the spectrum this time. So tonight we're going to talk about the data that we received from the National Student Clearinghouse, which is an organization that collects data from about 3,600 colleges and universities, representing 96% of all students enrolled in higher education. So they collect this data from the universities and share it back with us, and that's what we'll be looking at tonight. The data is really helping us give us information about our academic plan goal 6. And the first part of our academic plan with that is to increase post-secondary enrollment rates by at least 11% by 2020. And the first row there that you look at is the goals that we had set yearly for the 5 years. And the bottom line talks about our progress over 5 years. So we are increasing, and we are at the highest that we've been in the last 8 years in terms of post-secondary enrollment, but we're not quite where we wanted to be in terms of our goals. And you'll see the data in your packet that describes each building specifically, and we're having some good progress that looks like that, but we are also, we still have a ways to go with looking at that. On this chart, this breaks down this information a little bit further. So this chart will show from 2013, from the class of 2013 through the class of 2018, the number of students, or the percent of students, excuse me, who are enrolled in post-secondary education the fall after they graduate. And so as you can see, as I mentioned before, we are at an all-time high with that, and you look at the blue line and you'll see that information. When you look at the red and the gold-colored lines in there, that represents the kids who enrolled in a 2-year program, that's the red, or a 4-year program, that is the gold. And so it represents how the blue line falls out. So it's the blue line is 53%, but if you look at 2 years, that's 31%, and 4 years is 22% of the kids. So it breaks that down with that. And what we saw this year was an increase in the kids who enrolled, or with the class of 2018, an increase in the number of percent of kids who enrolled in 4-year universities, which automatically makes the other one drop a little bit because they're correlated like that. This particular chart is a little bit different. This lets us look at kids who persist from their freshman year to their sophomore year in college. And so this data reflects the class of 2016. And what you're going to see here, again, if you look at the blue line, going through there, it's pretty steady. And we had 71% of our kids who start in college, 71% persist through their sophomore year. That's a nice figure to go with. And then if you look at our 4-year, it's higher with our kids who attend 4 years. 63% of those kids persist through their sophomore year. And our 2-year, it's 84%. And in our 2-year is 63% of the kids. But what you will notice about our 2-year enrollment is that it had a big tick up this year. And so we have more kids who have looked at that. And when you think of what we've been doing, especially with Potawatomi Promise in that area, that could be a reason why we've seen kids persist, because of what we've been able to do while they were in high school to help them through that 2-year journey in a 2-year university. The next part of our plan, academic plan in Goal 6, talks about increasing post-secondary degree completions within 6 years from graduating. So this data is representative of the class of 2012. Okay, so it's been 6 years since they've graduated. And what we saw last year, our goal was 23%, and we had 23. Our goal this year was 25, but it was 22%. So we had about the same, but again, not quite reaching the goal that we had put on there. One of the things with this area, when you look at a 6-year out. We're talking kids of 2012. I know my daughter graduated in 2011, right? You know, so I thought she's been out of school for a long time. You know, and what are we doing? You know, how is it, what can we do that can help kids be more persistent so that they can graduate? You saw the difference between the 1 and the 2 year, and now from kids that actually graduate. It's not there where we need it to be. One of the things that we've put in place that I think will have an impact on that is offering that earlier opportunity that we're doing with, we started this year with our 6th grade students in more advanced classes so that that more kids are able to take advanced classes when they get to high school, because that's what's going to be one of the things that are going to help them when they are in college, is that opportunity for very rigorous curriculum. And that experience is what's going to help kids persist through and get degree completions with that. So that is one of the things we have put in place. So I just kind of wanted to end on our celebrations that we talked about. Again, it's an all-time high of our students who have enrolled in post-secondary education. And we just really can see that continuing with the work that we're doing with ECA, the work that we're doing with the Trades Academy, getting students that opportunity to get excited about and to actually have some experiences in, which we also know helps them to maintain that second year and going and keeping to go with that. So that is one of the things we are very proud of. And again, we're at an all-time high with students persisting in our 2-year universities, which really affects a lot of our kids. Iowa Western is the place where most of our kids go for school, so it's nice to see that tick up and see them having success with that as well. Any questions that I can answer for you?
Do you know, will the ECA students be reflected in this clearinghouse data in the future? Like, well,
In their year of graduation, they should be reflected in that data.
they will be.
Yeah. Because they have to complete their high school graduation before they'll show up in the day, but they will show up in the data at that time.
After they graduate, they
Correct.
will count as a 2-year persister and completer?
I'm not sure.
Or will they only be tracked from that point on as a 4-year enrollment?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Corey? Corey,
And I know, I'm just asking because, you know, clearinghouse data is very useful, but it's only, in terms of if the ECA students are not reflected in that data, it's only telling part of the story.
We don't know.
Okay.
But what we do know is we'll be able to count them. We'll hand count them.
You'll
if
just
we have
add 'em-
to.
add 'em
Yeah,
in,
I believe the
yeah.
way that the clearinghouse counts the data is they take a high school graduation date and then they move forward from that based on data they get back from the colleges and universities. But we have all of them tracked.
Right.
So we'll add them all into we'll count every one of them.
Yeah, and Chris, Mr. LaFurla, the one thing they won't leave with is an associate, because we need them to move forward as a freshman to keep
Sure.
their scholarships. They'll take, and then the college receiving them will see that they've achieved the associate, but we want them to enter the 4-year as a freshman, not as a junior.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, whether you're using clearinghouse data or just tabulating district data ourselves, that those ECA students that persist from year 1 to year 2, those are persisters. And when they complete an associate's degree, that's a completion.
Right.
You know, because, and those are parts of the outcomes that, and data in the story that we tell to the community, so.
And I do think that you're correct. We need to check with them because we still code them to our schools. So they're not a Iowa Western student.
Right.
They are a district student.
Right.
So we do need to, it'll probably have to be a hand count. Because the one thing that we were so particular around was we wanted our students to be able to apply for all of the grants and
Right.
have all of their Pell money.
Right.
And if I made them a junior, it didn't happen. So that's why it was so critical that we left them as high school seniors that completed that associate. And they can still walk and everything. But yeah, so that's a good point.
Either way, it's all good news.
Just curious, on this report, it shows like most frequent institutions of enrollment.
Mhm.
Is that students continually enrolled in that school as like 16, 17, 18, or is that where
That-
students
that
are
is
going
by-
from?
That is by year of graduation. That's in your packet right there. So you could just, I left you have the past 3 years of data in your packet there, so you can, if you wanted to kind of compare to see where our kids are going when they graduate. That is not clearinghouse data. That is other data that we collect.
Okay.
Claire walked away. I don't have to get the right thing, but
Hard to-
yeah.
Then I assume that the big bump, the 2 years, was due to Potawatomi Promise.
That's what
A
that's
lot
our
of
theory
kids.
on that, yes.
A lot of kids
Mhm.
are at Western now.
Well, and I think when you look at what we've done to help prepare those kids to be successful for that, with the stats class that they take and the other supports that they have while they're still at our high schools, I think that's probably contributed to that persistence rate.
What is the, I guess, what's the thought around, unless I missed this, around TJ's number? The disparity, we're getting this widening disparity between AL and TJ going to college, especially the 4 years. Is it less emphasis? Is it less, we're not engaging the kids? Is just, what's going on there?
I think that's a really good question, and that is one of the points that we're delving into with TJ administration right now to look and see what is it about expectations and what we help kids see what they can do. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, but it's definitely the area we are looking at right now.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like every time I'm talking to, like, especially a junior, but even seniors, I mean, the conversations about what's the next step, where you're going to college, and we do all these different tournaments and things like that, and we can have that conversation all the time with kids.
Mhm.
And I am shocked number of kids that choose jobs, choose other things right off the bat, or, that are involved in extracurriculars, that are involved in kind of, they're good kids in school, they're doing well in extracurriculars, and they're jumping into work as a path to provide either for a family or some other reason,
And I think, Mr. Arthur, that's one of the reasons when we went with the goal of another piece of paper. It's going to help counselors begin to work with the students, because another piece of paper can even come to completing year 13. So taking enough coursework to complete their freshman year of college. But there's going to be many opportunities, but that shifts that mindset that all students can achieve and enter a 2 or 4 year university. And that's where we want them to see their self moving toward, instead of just, I graduate now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Well, and college enrollment just tells one piece of that. It's one piece of data, and fortunately, the clearinghouse provides a resource to track that data. All the, it's, the labor force is gonna be much harder. I think we've had a conversation about how to track what happens to students that don't enroll in college, because there's just no way to know. But it looks like that disparity is happening not because TJ is really
Well, AL's
dropping, it's
some
AL's kind of,
growth.
yeah,
But it's, TJ's pretty much just stayed stagnant.
right.
Saying that.
And one thing I'd like to bring up, when we were reading through the Leadership for Student Learning in the module, they talked about the one school district in the high achieving district talked about they were engaging their students beyond high school. What's next? And I think that's the conversation that we need to continue talking at the board table, is what do we do as a board to have those engaging conversations, to encourage students to think past just high school, and to think that, yes, they can complete that 2-year program or that 4-year degree program. So I look forward to being able to talk about that in our work sessions, so that what we can do as a board to extend that conversation from just our work sessions, but to the community. And that, I think that can be an exciting time for us to be able to engage more people to to think about what's past high school
Well,
graduation.
to Chris's point, you know, you look at AO's numbers at 48%, pretty consistently there for a few years, to be 60% now, enrolled in college right after high school. That's a great number.
Something happened.
You know,
Something made a big change.
Is it a cultural change that's going on there? What's going on that's driving that? It's something we should try to replicate, so.
Brought that data up.
No further questions from the board? Thank you very much for the celebrations that we can honor.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Smith. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Fraser, Fringer, I'm sorry. Can you tell I'm getting tired here? I apologize, Dave, for that. So our final presentation, the update on the Blink. As I followed this and Dave has talked with me and brought me up to speed, this is definitely a project that our community and our school district should be really proud of. And Mr. Fringer has done some incredible work as representing us in the community, being a cheerleader for us in the community, and also being highly respected in our community. So at this time, he's going to present to you some really good information on our progress and the work that we're doing, and even being able to drill down to let you know. A lot of times you want to know, well, what do students use? How's the community using? And he's going to be able to take us down that storyline. So, Mr. Fringer.
Thank you very much. This really is a good news story. 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, in 2014, the school district had a strategic plan, and essentially our goal was to make more Wi-Fi available for our students. All of our students had devices by that point, but did not always have connectivity at home. The school district strategic plan drove this, but the city jumped right in with us as an excellent partner, and we have since 2014 been involved in a 28E organization, the Council Bluffs Area Wi-Fi Consortium, and that is the governance around the Wi-Fi initiative. There's a governance committee. Those are the 6 members, 2 from the school district, 2 from the city of Council Bluffs, and then from our financial partners, the Iowa West Foundation, Mr. Pete Tulipana, and from Google, Sean Zuber, who is new to the committee, replacing Mike Wolf, now that he's on the city council. That would be double duty, I think, representing both. So that is the governance committee. It's a 28E organization, and at this point is financially solvent thanks to our partners, the Iowa West Foundation and Google, and their yearly contributions to our ongoing development of the network. Back in 2014, we stated that our goal was to provide no-cost wireless connectivity for citizens and students wherever financially and technically feasible. And at this point, within the boundaries of the Council Bluffs Community School District, but we didn't exclude the possibility of moving, outside our boundaries once we're finished with the Council Bluffs Community Schools. I mentioned funding primarily from Iowa West and Google. There have been other small contributors, and during phase 1, the Charles E. Lakin Foundation was a major contributor to that first phase, which included the campus along North 16th Street there, the Charles E. Lakin Human Services Campus. So primarily the financial funding has come from those 3 sources. There have been lots of community partners who've stepped up in other ways to help us, and those are listed on the website. As of today, there's 4 phases completed. A 5th phase is all planned, and actually some of this stuff is starting to arrive in boxes for installation here later this spring. This map should look somewhat familiar to you. Right down the middle of the map is Broadway. You'll see the interstate to the left or to the west. The green areas are the areas that are completed. The yellow area is phase 5. Sometimes we refer to that area as the dog leg. It's a little bit misshapen there. It does include all of that area north of Broadway and east of the interstate. It kind of finishes the north of Broadway section. One of the criteria the committee has been using to decide which areas are next is poverty and need. And those of you who are familiar with our community do know that there are some areas of high need along the interstate in the north area of that dog leg, including some apartment complexes where lots of our students live. So that will be phase 5. Phase 6s and 7 haven't been defined for sure yet, but I would venture to guess that we'll be finishing the area south of Broadway towards the interstate, that area with nothing indicated. Rue and the Thomas Jefferson school attendance areas. And then after that, proceeding south into the Longfellow attendance area, directly south of what was phase 2. So again, with our current funding, we're proceeding at 1 phase per year, which is great, and we're thankful for that. But now that we have a proof of concept, we could go faster as well, and we've not stopped asking for other financial contributors, and we continue to do that. So the whole network, the green area you saw on the map, is represented in this data, the Blink total traffic overview. The number on the right, where the faces or heads are on the chart, represents 86,630 something unique connections. That means unique devices connected in that live Wi-Fi area between July and November of 2018. 86,630 unique. Of course, I'm unique, and I'm 3 of those because I have a phone and I have a tablet, and that it is unique devices, and a person who had 20 devices would be represented 20 times there. It would be most common, though, that an individual has 1 or 2 devices that connect to the network. The other number on the left side of the slide, represented by the Wi-Fi signal, 161 terabits of data was exchanged. That is it's hard to conceptualize how much that is. It is an unbelievable amount of data. It would represent the download of 20 million photographs, or the download of 161,000 movies, or completion of 16 million employment applications. And those are representative numbers, not hoping that it's being used for all of those great things. But that is a representation of the amount of data that's being used on the network as a whole by the community. It's very impressive. Where are the people connecting from? This is a heat map. The reds and oranges represent the higher volume of connection. You'll notice the map represents essentially the same live Wi-Fi map that I showed you earlier. The interesting thing is the newest phase, phase 4, is that bright red dot south of Broadway there in the Edison neighborhood. An incredible amount of use in that neighborhood. Some of it might be the fact that it's so new there. Lots of people are connecting. You'll also notice the yellow areas that correspond around our schools and neighborhoods, around Bloomer Elementary School, Canesville, Roosevelt, Wilson Middle School, and also along North 16th Street there where the Laking campus is. So we are definitely serving populations in need by providing a service that would be expensive and maybe not attainable in some of those cases. And we'll talk about the students in just a few minutes. Just a couple of interesting facts. As we speak today, Blink, Bluffs Community Wi-Fi, is the largest free public Wi-Fi project in the United States by geography, by the number of acres covered. If you went to San Jose, California, they have wickedly fast Wi-Fi there. It's in a much smaller geography, but they have a very high population there, so they would have numbers that would exceed our numbers. But there is no project providing free public Wi-Fi that covers more geography than the project in Council Bluffs, and we're only not even quite halfway done. As I mentioned, over 50,000 unique connections per month. In addition to the green areas, we also broadcast Blink in all of our school buildings. You'll notice the sign on the wall. If you needed free public Wi-Fi here or in any other school facility, you could have that. The city is also broadcasting the network at Tom Hannafin Rivers Edge Park, the Mid-America Center, the Public Library, City Hall, and the Sports Complex, also helping to build the brand of the community Wi-Fi in their facilities. So it's really a project that we work on together. If you've been to the Mid-America Center, they've recently upgraded the Wi-Fi there. It's finally good. If you have a meeting there, you can actually do something on the Wi-Fi, and rather than calling it City of Council Bluffs Wi-Fi, they're a team effort, and you would connect to Bluffs Community Wi-Fi at the Mid-America Center as well. The other thing is a little economic development angle. SmartWave Technologies won the bid in 2014 to be our engineering partner. They've been an excellent partner. They've not raised prices. They've continued to provide real value to the project in terms of engineering and design and installation. So we're very pleased with them as a partner. They've also come to town. They were an Atlanta company that came to this area. They hired an intern who worked in our school district, was an Iowa Western student who worked here as an intern. They hired him. And that person now works all around the United States with SmartWave. In addition to that, they have created relationships with the City of Lincoln, Nebraska Department of Transportation, University of Nebraska System, and Exarban Village. And I'm going to come back to Exarban Village in a few minutes, but think of Exarban Village in Omaha and who developed that. Just keep that in mind. The student network. Just our students and their Chromebooks and their safe browsing experience over the school district's portion of the Blink network. 2,847 Chromebooks connected to the Blink network outside of schools. This isn't in school. These are out in the neighborhoods away from school between July and November. Those 2,847 students represent about a third of the kids that go to school here in the whole school district. And I don't think our geography quite represents a third of the community yet, maybe about a third. The numbers align to suggest that the students who do live in the Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi areas are connecting their devices and using them for both, learning, schoolwork, connection, collaboration, and I hope also, to help find jobs and connect with others, and also to provide entertainment. And oftentimes these devices are the only computers families have. So I think it would not be unusual for a family to also use that to help with their day-to-day family business in some cases. In the case of this amount of data, which is much smaller than what's broadcast across the whole network, that 171 gigabits of data would represent around 31,000 educational videos watched, or around 900,000 classroom assignments completed, or around 300,000 multimedia presentations, something you might work on in class, or around 70,000 photographs or sound files edited, just as an example of what you could do with that amount of data. It's a lot. It's still a lot, considering it's 2,800 students using a Chromebook device, which is essentially limited, in some ways, especially by content filtering. Our students don't have wide open access to the internet. They have a smaller part of the internet, and that amount of data represents a lot of good work being done by our kids in the community on the network. This is the same map, but just representing our students. You'll see the brightest red dot is in the vicinity of Bloomer Elementary School, Bayless Park, the public library. You'll also notice up to the north, you'll see around Wilson Middle School in Roosevelt, a very hot area there, and then also down in the Edison neighborhood. So those students who live in that area are using it all around the network. Challenges. All projects are not without challenges, and clearly if we've proven an engineering concept that we can in fact reliably do this, we can provide a good quality outdoor wireless signal across the community, winter, summer, spring, or fall. What's really preventing us from just doing the whole rest of the city would be money. The Iowa West Foundation and Google have been very generous, and I'm not suggesting in any way that we're not grateful for that. We need to find a couple of extra partners, and we're continuing to work on that and see if we could bring in some new community partners who might help us accelerate and go a little bit faster. Mid-American Energy and the Wi-Fi Consortium have some disagreements about billing. The Mid-American Energy folks look at each access point or each pole as an account rather than a group of poles, a phase as an account. So just like at home, you have a minimum monthly electric bill for Mid-American. Each pole has a minimum electric bill every month. We disagree with that, and we've been working hard to see if we could change the way they look at the account structure. There's also an agreement with the City of Council Bluffs and Mid-American Energy, a franchise agreement that allows the city to mount on Mid-American Energy poles. And Mid-American Energy says that's for street signs, no parking, snow route, directional signs in the community. That's not for access points on the light poles. And the city attorney says, oh, but I think it might be. So there's conversation occurring between the city attorney's office and Mid-American Energy about that franchise agreement, which was signed a long time ago, probably more than 50 years ago. And part of Mid-American's argument on their behalf is that at that time, we didn't know about things like this. We were really talking about no parking signs on our poles, not, electrically connected. But the city attorney thinks that we may need to litigate this or head that direction. If that does happen, then we would certainly be represented by the city. We're not to that point at all. Still talking about it. Phase 1 is nearing 5 years old. That first phase that we installed in 2014 along North 16th Street and in the Roosevelt neighborhood is getting to be 5 years old, and at some point in the not too distant future, we'll need to start replacing equipment. That'll slow us down because we only have a certain amount of money. So those are our challenges. I asked you to remember Exarban Village and the developer, the Noddle companies. They are also the same company that is developing the Playland Park area, which is just to the west of our Phase 5. And SmartWave and the Noddle companies and the Iowa West Foundation are interested in expanding Blink in that area too, the same way they've done free public outdoor Wi-Fi at Exarban Village. So again, economic development, community connections, and the possibility of doing all sorts of amazing things. The Bluffs Community Wi-Fi project is helping our students and our community achieve more. And I am happy to take any questions.
A lot to digest there.
Did we ever anticipate, I assume they'd hope, but that you'd have that almost, 1,000 to 1 amount of data flowing between school kids and
Right.
community? That's amazing.
It's a staggering number of users and it's a staggering amount of data. It's very impressive. And a lot of the heavy lifting for that is done by the city because, the vast majority of that data flows through the city's network and out to the internet. We take care of our students. So kudos to them.
Now, they're about, what is that, about 300 poles or something like that, or 400?
Access points?
Yeah,
Points? Yeah, a ton of access points.
we'll be approaching 400 with Phase 5.
Yes.
What is the cost to develop a phase or to put together a phase, so the annual on a new phase?
Right now, because design is pretty well complete and lots of the backbone is done, a lot of the cost in the first 2 or 3 phases was developing that backbone to carry the data back and out to the internet. Right now, we can do a phase for about $200,000, and that is, those phases you would see in the map. The dogleg phase is actually a $300,000 phase. It's the biggest phase that we've ever done, and it's a combination of money from 2018 and 2019 that's going to make that happen.
And follow up, how much does it cost to maintain each phase as per year, I guess?
What we've done is created a rolling support. So long as we're implementing a phase a year, SmartWave is including the cost for the previous phases in the support cost quoted for the new phase. So when we pay for Phase 5, we're also paying for support for 4, 3, 2, and 1. So again, part of the same $200,000 yearly budget. Sure.
But that won't include the upgrades, correct, to
Right.
phase 1 and 2 as they get older?
At some point, there's going to be a need for access point replacement. We figure probably around 7, 8 years is the typical life of outdoor access points. Our partner, our engineering partner, works in warm climates in Atlanta and Tucson and Mountain View in San Jose, California. So They're not as experienced in northern climates, but we've been very pleased with the performance of the equipment so far. We've not had mass failures at all. Failures are typically caused by auto accidents, hitting poles, the pole comes down. That's,
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
With the conclusion of the reports, we move to our resolutions. We have resolution regarding the former Target building. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I can make the resolution that the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors approve the purchase of the former Target building at the Mall of Bluffs for $1.9 million from Dearborn Properties LLC.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the motion before us is to approve the purchase of the former Target building. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion to approve the purchase has been approved. Next before us is the naming of the building. Is there a motion?
I'll move to name the former Target building facility located at 1751 Madison Avenue, Lot 2, as the Madison campus.
There is our motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Just to enlighten folks on this, when the current students will be utilizing the facility, it will be Kern Middle School at the Madison campus. And then when the Woodrow Wilson students occupy the space, it will be called the Woodrow Wilson Middle School at the Madison campus. So it will change its name as the appropriateness of each middle school in occupying that space. So the motion is to approve the building naming as the Madison campus. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion carried. For us now is the plan specifications and form of contract for the Madison campus.
Yeah, I'll move that we authorize and direct Secretary to give notice of public hearing to review plans and specifications for the former Target building facility to be held at the ESC offices, 300 West Broadway, Suite 1600, Council Bluffs, Iowa, at 6:30 PM on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019.
We have our motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the motion before us is to approve the plan specifications and form of contract for the Madison campus.
It's to hold a public hearing.
For the public hearing, right?
Yes.
For the public hearing. Thank you for
Yes, sir.
advising me on that. I was jumping the gun. Patience, patience. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw,
Yes.
Mr. McGlade,
Yes.
and Mr. Kazire.
Yes. And with that, our business is complete. I do want to bring up a recap of our work session. This evening before our regular board meeting, we started a learning opportunity for the board in the Leadership for Learning book, and we're using the study guide to lead us in the discussion of what it makes or what it takes for a board to be an effective leader in student learning. And we just started the conversation, so we were touched on topics of such things as what led us to seek becoming a member of the Council Bluffs Community School District Board of Directors. We each had an opportunity to talk about what led us to seeking the nomination for board membership. We also talked about some items that we would like to see occur at the board table in our discussion to be effective leaders in promoting student achievement. Can anybody else guide me and help me if they want to add to the discussion?
I guess, just much of the discussion was around the importance of not letting the family life or the race or creed or income level of a student be a determining factor on whether or not they matter to the district, whether or not they graduate from high school. And I think that's long been something we've held as obviously something we believe in, is that all students with the right supports can achieve, and that's been our kind of relentless pursuit. I think over there, I think it was why we, as I said, why we chose our current superintendent. And then that's the focus we have as a district, is that, good is not going to be exceptional for us. And that the goal is to always be improving, and to give every child the opportunity to achieve whatever they wish in life. So kind of fits real well with our guiding principles of the board that were created based on that, I think, very same book, or at least some of the other sources that led to it. We breathe it, and I think we live it, and now we're going back and studying it again.
I appreciate those words, and they mean a lot to us as a board collectively. We all believe that all students can and will and deserve to achieve at high levels. So I look forward to our future work sessions where we can delve deeper into those ideas that will lead us to a more effective board. So thank you very much for that time this evening. And with that, we are adjourned.